things act on us. That is true in all matters of life. But how much we act on them, how they act on us, is a matter of one's mind as well as how one reacts to it. Previous theories of the mind in the early days of psychology have rejected the one thing which makes us human, our consciousness and free will. Whether it be Freud, his overfocus on etiology, the study of cause and effects rather than the study of reasons and reasoning, which, if we are to blindly believe etiology, then since we'll always be acting according to the things which happened to us or were done to us, basically our traumas, we'll continue to see new experiences as affirming that traumatic belief or strengthening it, and hence solidify ourselves into this identity and never get free. But people do get free all the damn time. Or Skinner and his deterministic perspective, which, yes, acknowledges that whilst the masses overall would make the same choices overall due to being products of their time and having the same amount of information, we still express our individuality in the personal level. One acts according to the statistics, for example, the overwhelming percentage of ice cream sales in the world, about 70 to 80%, are vanilla and then chocolate and so on. But individuality is still expressed, whether it's in the subcategories of vanilla, French vanilla, coconut, or sugar apple, all of these sub flavors of vanilla, or the percentage of the milk to sugar to cream which is preferable for an individual, or the method it's prepared and preferred, like gelato, soft serve, or kulfi. The point is that we still express our individuality, which is, yes, a mix of certain deterministic, cultural, or external factors outside of our control. We still hold preferences, still do research, still have innate desires and will, whether it be for happiness, power, or anything else. Take the example of addiction and how the people who are objectively anti free will try to explain it, although they wouldn't call themselves that. They try to apply neurological determinism by saying that the amygdala is activated when one doesn't get the substance, not understanding that the individual's beliefs and hence the very thoughts he chooses to think are what causes the amygdala to activate rather than seeing what happened. They confuse the causality very ironically and hence can't see what came first. The mind, which is a metaphysical consciousness, first had a belief about it, then saw it as a choice based on preconceived ideas, likely based on misinformation, decided that it manifested in the physical matter, and that is the mind. Or they show brain scans of a person who used drugs for 1 year as if that's enough proof, not realizing that there are plenty of people who quit cold turkey with that same level of brain or even a 20-year level of brain without any problems as soon as they had a change in their mind, a change in their desires, a change in their will. Same with biological determinism, wherein they say certain genes are passed on, making one more likely to have an addiction when they still haven't found any gene or gene cluster correlated with that. Environmental or Skinnerian determinism, wherein they say that because of whatever things happened in one's youth, will go on to explain whatever behaviors they have in late life, not taking into account interpretation or reinterpretation, which can easily be done by the individual and is the key goal of plenty of great therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, Adlerian counseling, etc. For example, 15% of people with trauma have behaviors that can be called addictive. 20% of people with depressive disorders qualify for addictive disorders also. They see that and then say that, okay, this clearly means that there is a comorbidity and hence people who are at risk of this are also at risk of that. But that is stupid, because if we see the data, then 80% of people with depression don't have an addiction, 85% of people with trauma don't have an addiction, and that doesn't stop the determinists again from calling it something like comorbidity, saying trauma or depression causes addiction when in fact there is minimal correlation between them. All of these are approaches which fail in one way or another, so they now try to make up new words to cover everything like neurobiopsychosocial, never addressing the inherent thing which causes the reactions in the brain or the body, the ideas an individual holds about the thing, about the substance or the behavior, and the inherent desire for it. If only it was as simple as people choosing to use heavily or addictively because they have the belief that their trauma, depression, etc. may be temporarily gone if they use it. If perhaps they hadn't had any reason to emotionally see it as bad or neutral. or perhaps that they like, or perhaps on some level they like it because the idea of addiction and powerlessness absolves them of responsibility. Look at Munchausen syndrome, it's a real thing. Three men have different reactions to drinking. One starts getting angry and beating his wife, another is calm and he talks with his boss over a drink, another is happy and boisterous as he drinks with his friends. It's not all that unlikely that all of the three reactions were from the same damn person, but he just chose to believe whatever he chose to believe about alcohol. There's no drug which has as such range there's no drug which has such a range reactions. It's almost as if it's a placebo or expectancy bias wherein a person acts out what he believes. If it was only a matter of convincing these people from an emotional standpoint that the behavior or substance doesn't do anything for them and that using it is as useful as smoking horse poop. This can easily be done by finding whatever learnings an individual may have, not just about addiction, by the way, this applies to practically anywhere in life, writing them, questioning them, and replacing them with better beliefs by their own volition. What keeps an addiction or behavior alive is desire, not trauma, but the present goal, as Adler would say, of keeping that desire or excuse alive as it allows us to do or to avoid something which we like. The most unscientific thing that determinists have done is applied Occam's razor, which is basically eliminating something until it still works, so basically improving efficiency, to crucial things like consciousness or belief, and then fail to apply it on their own and see what would happen, which verily biased, but which very bias their beliefs. As Einstein said after an experiment on quantum physics, that can't be right. God doesn't play dice with the universe, and his colleague, one of the early adopters of quantum mechanics, which went on to overturn the Einsteinian approach to physics, said, Einstein, don't tell God what to do. Two words: quantum indeterminacy. Free will exists. Free will is there, and saying that, oh, you have genes like this, that means that you cannot do that. Oh, you have all of these previous past contexts, you are in the present now, you have all of the control to move over them, but you choose to hang on to them because of whatever bad beliefs, whatever beliefs you have about identity. That identity is just frozen. I'm an introvert, I will forever be an introvert. I'm neurotic, I will forever be neurotic, not realizing that identity isn't a place held in stone but a slider according to sure the previous context that you had, but also your own preferences and the thing that you feel comfortable with. I find it easy to be introverted with my friends. I find it easy to be extroverted with people I don't know. I don't find it that hard and I can enjoy both sides. Does that mean I'm an ambivert? No, I was very socially anxious in my youth. But I went on to overcome that and I saw that I still prefer introvertedness and I still prefer extrovertedness in some areas. It's almost as if I have nuance, which is a word that these people don't know about. The point of Skinner and many other determinists or neo-Freudians was introducing objectivity in psychology, as they had seen their colleagues in physics get better results when they stopped personifying things. Their folly was that they objectified to a degree which was unscientific. They objectified humans themselves. The method which they used to gain the data were the same as the ones used on animals, things, and machines, reducing our humanity, our sapience, to the most crucial factor of humanhood into oblivion. I've talked about all these theories about consciousness which are wrong, so what is the right one? Or the closest to right, as of course, science is a process of getting less wrong over time, which is why you shouldn't take studies at face value, by the way, especially if they're new. Look at what Baumeister and the ego depletion stuff did. It was a globally accepted theory about willpower, which turned out to be wrong, and when people started to actually believe it, they performed worse because they thought that the willpower was limited. Look it up. So, mimetic prospectiveness as a thinking framework first requires an understanding of the woods. Memes are terms which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. However, the origin and the way I'm using it is meaning an idea that is related to genes, and much like how a biological virus can reproduce, mutate, evolve, die, and be evolutionarily successful or unsuccessful, the same is with meme, which quite literally means ideas. An idea, when an idea is currently being transferred by me to you in the form of words, in the form of sound, right? And that idea, as you will see, will have all of these biases that you may have in your head act on it, and as a result it will mutate, and your interpretation of it would be slightly different than my interpretation, than anyone else's interpretation. And so by me giving you that idea through this video, it has reproduced and it has gotten into your head. But whether it will be useful for you, much like the gut microbiome that you have, whether it will be useful for you is a different matter entirely, based on your interpretation of the idea, how you got it, and how you will use it. So everyone has memes, and when one talks to people, like we're doing right now, so this is a one-way conversation, one gains their memes or frameworks of looking at the world. As said, people have biases based on past experiences, imagination, fiction, and they synthesize all of these factors, which creates even more memes. So for example, people say pigs are flying. How did they get to that? Because they understood the idea of absurdity, they understood the idea of wings, they understood the idea of pigs. So they combined that, and then they saw that this is absurd, and then they combined that, which synthesized a new belief, synthesized a new metaphor that pigs are flying, which is something absurd is happening, a miracle happened or something. Now, the point on the focus of memetics, which is the study of memes, much like genetics, is to first gain an ability to what the fuck is to first gain an ability to gain useful memes. Useful just means that it helps you achieve goals as well as set useful ones. The second is to see all or at least some of the incentives or the biases, etc., the person or the robot transmitting these memes to you may have. I just want to get better at public speaking, which, as you can see, I am relatively suboptimal at, especially in my books. And I want to flesh out this idea, and I want to get some feedback. I want to just really make sure that it sticks in my brain. And one of the best ways to do that is by teaching people. So that's my incentive, as an example, right? For example, there's an incentive for a businessman to over exaggerate or how emotionally painful a problem is, so you can buy the material quicker, and so you feel more emotional pain, and hence you have more of an incentive. Or how someone who realizes, who whether he realizes it or not, is emotionally invested into an idea. So for example, a vegan may talk about how healthy the vegan diet is, but the reason they may do it is because they feel better because animals aren't dying. Or a person on carnivore diet may say that it's healthy and anti-inflammatory, but perhaps he just feels more manual or something on it, and it simplifies his lifestyle and mental load, so that's why he goes on to it. Again, there's plenty of biases that people have, plenty of unknown biases even too. Then the synthesis, which is an ability to combine these ideas, as I talked about, as well as the ability to use them and have a full belief in an idea based on the environment. For example, if I feel overwhelmed, I may choose to believe in some form of holy determinism, in that God has a plan for me. If I feel powerless, I will remind myself that free will result in me getting back up. Right? So you may say that this isn't true and it just makes me a hypocrite, but it's a belief that hypocrisy is bad. Who gave you that? What was their incentive? Would an ability to be a hypocrite, as in, let's say, being stern with your employees but also being nice on television, be hypocrisy, or just normal tactfulness? That's the word. So, whilst aligning oneself with objective reality is useful, what limits us in our life and whatever materialist or mental state or mind or location we want is our beliefs. If we are too cold, we warm ourselves up. If we are too slow, we lose weight and do so in the right way. The same applies here. Be able to change your beliefs in order to get your goals. Good, bad, etc. are all human constructs. And I'm not saying that become an axe murderer with a willingness to play. And I'm not saying that you should become an axe murderer or something, right? Because clearly morals and whatnot are human beliefs or something. But instead have a willingness to play and experiment with these ideas which will serve you well. So, for example, I was told uh, the idea of Muhammad Ali coming into the scene, and before he came into the boxing scene, there were two camps roughly, which was featherweights, which hit faster but they didn't have as much of a punch in their throws or whatever, fists or whatever. And then there were the heavyweights, which hit hard but they were slow. So what Muhammad Ali did is that he got as much muscle on him, as much useful muscle on him as he could, and he also did a lot of cardio so he could be as fast as possible. So he got rid of all of the fat on his body, but he just kept the muscle as much as he could, and then as a result, he hit like a featherweight in terms of speed, but also hit like a heavyweight in terms of the amount of punch that he was packing, right? So that was an example of non-binary thinking, which is something that you will find many examples of, especially if you start looking for it. People were looking at, let's say, Steve Jobs. He came into the industry, into the computer industry, and he saw that people were just focusing on specs. They were just focusing on some apps and whatnot, not focusing on the aesthetics. So because he had that third person perspective, he had the ability to introduce a third aspect into it, which was again an example of non-binary thinking, not fitting into the binary poles which people want to keep you in because it simplifies their life, not yours, not benefit doesn't benefit your life. And so he overcame that and gave people a great aesthetic experience, gave people great apps, gave people all of the specs which were happening in the industry, and he just optimized all of them, right? Which people said couldn't be done. So there's plenty of things that you can do to get into this state of non-binary thinking, which will go on to help you. Now, lastly, there's interpretation. Imagine two people get hit, right? And the objective reality of falling can be predicted with physics pretty much like a coin flip. The reaction slash response, however, cannot. One person will see the fight as not worth it and play hurt for longer. Another will fight because he has been dishonored or something. And this is the classic fight or flight scenario. But people have plenty of other reactions like freeze or fawn, which means to be nice to the abuser. Not that weird if you just look at Stockholm syndrome or something. Bribe, intimidate, flay if you're a night lord, which I hope some people get that reference, and many myriads more. The reason everyone reacts differently is because of interpretation, goals, values, biases, self image, etc. When we look at the outside world, we see it through our biases, choices of words, our subjective desires, etc. As said, this topic for is honestly just too private and unique for everybody because you have your own personal biases, you have your own personal context, etc. So reinterpreting it, analyzing it is something only you can do. However, I can give you some basic prospectiveness in order to help you with that. So let's break this thing down into first principles thinking. For example, let's say a woman is wearing a knee level skirt, right? It's objectively just a woman wearing a knee level skirt. If you're from a city, it seems conservative, but if you're from a super conservative area, it seems scandalous because objectively, the it seems scandalous, but objectively, the woman simply is, right? The woman simply is wearing a knee length skirt. It isn't bad, it isn't good. It's all based on what beliefs the individual holds about that, right? She isn't any of the words that people may describe her, like hot or promiscuous, traditional or prudent, but simply a human female with cloth on herself of certain length. She has eyes, two mammary glands, ovaries, hands, etc., and her own set of beliefs, biases, context, etc., which play into her life and the choice she made to wear that skirt or something. Everything from her clothes, the cell on her skin, the hair she currently has, her personality, her beliefs are subject to change, much like everything and everyone is. She simply is, and so are the cells which make her up. Nothing less, nothing more. And the same is with you. And note that whilst this may seem a lot like determinism, which I was talking against, this is not that but universal objectivity, or at least an attempt at it. The woman simply is, words simply are. They do not have any correlation or relation. The consciousness of that woman simply is. So is her biases, so is everything else, including your feelings about what's good or bad. Learn to see that. See that something simply exists. Nothing is good or bad, red or blue. It's all based on your interpretation and what word you call it. So For example, a person can see the blue color and you can call it blue. Another person can call it aqua. If it's a woman with particularly more knowledge, she can call it ultramarine or something, right? So prospectiveness overall is an ability to see all of the things that we have in our arsenal, which is our biases, our skills, our meta abilities like Occam's razor, first principles thinking, or the memetic prospectiveness which I'm teaching you, and anything else, and apply it where one sees fit, or if one can't see a way to solve the problem that they're trying to solve with the current resources, then one figures out how they can get that. So, one thing that you need to understand is that the past isn't a force which drives someone, but instead a resource from which we can selectively extract information. Whether that's done in a biased or unserving manner is another thing. And take all of these things into account to prospect our future possibilities, see which actions will get said probability to manifest, as well as potential problems you may face and how you can remedy them, and then execute said present action and the plan later. As Charlie Morgan, one of my mentors, put it, experience comes first, it's interpreted, and a belief forms. The belief affects our paradigm, which is a collection of all beliefs about reality. This box is behind me. Our judgments of said reality, this box will explode in a few minutes, and how we relate to it. I need to get away from that box. The paradigm is what fuels our brain, which is responsible for making action, for making thoughts. Apologies. The thoughts create our perceived options, not just potential options we are aware of, but also which ones we consider, how we consider them, etc., which affect our decisions, and then that creates our actions, and our actions create our lifestyle. In essence, if one can change the beliefs, one can change the lifestyle. And that the best way to go about that is by mimetic prospectiveness. Let me say that again. You have an experience which you interpret based on all of your biases and your experiences of your previous reality, the past or whatnot, right? And as a result, you now have an experience, and as a result, you have a belief about that experience. That belief plays into your paradigm, which is either your objective understanding of reality, your judgments about reality, and how you relate to it, as in how it relates to yourself, right? The paradigm is a mix of all of these thoughts. The paradigm causes you to have thoughts. Thoughts are what make up potential options and how we see them, what we consider, whether we know this option is out there, etc. Then that results in our decision making, and our decision making results in our action, and our action results in our lifestyle, which we choose, right? If we choose to not do anything, then that is also an action. So get rid of the solidified mindset that thinking you simply are this way and you cannot change, that you cannot grow. The belief doesn't serve you, so what do? You adopt better ones by first identifying what's wrong with this one and then removing it, finding out better ones. Eventually, you will find that your life starts to get better when you start believing in it, when you start seeing that, okay, this is actually what's true, this is actually what serves me, gets me more power or happiness. So you don't even need to be happy to force your brain to have happy thoughts. People ask what came first, the chicken, which for our purpose is the happy person, or the egg, and which is our happy thoughts, and the answer is the egg. Happy thoughts caused a happy. I've given you this idea to essentially become stronger, happier, or whatever you truly want. And hopefully, you can use this to contribute to your own reality and make it better to your community and to humanity. Now, I want you to question this. I want you to question everything I've taught you, and eventually, you'll find out that it is unquestionable. You will find out its greatness and how to apply it in your mind. And as a result, become happier, more competent, independent, and show up better in all the areas of your life which matter to you. Cheers. Oh yeah, book suggestions are Meditations by Markus Aurelius, Useful Not True by Simon Sinek, Courage to Not Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitage Koga. Bonus ones, which if you really want to read further, are Death of Ivan Ilych by Leo Tolstoy. It's a fiction book, pretty small. Self-Development and the Way to Power by L.W. Rogers, also pretty good. Peacemaking Among Higher Peacemaking Among Higher Order Primate by Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Put aside your political bias, whether it be towards him or against him, and just see the books, all of the books, as they simply are, and how they can serve you and help you better your life. Cheers.